Should Christians stop shopping at stores that have taken an unbiblical stance to political and social issues? More on that soon, but first, I am thrilled to welcome you to our very first Stewardship conversation segment here on YouTube, where I join together with other faith-based financial professionals to answer your money questions. We take any kind of questions about finances and answer them here from a biblical perspective and also share some practical wisdom on how to manage your finances. Today, I'm joined with my friend David Sandu, who is a certified financial advisor and helps Christians to manage their investment portfolios from a biblical perspective. We're going to be talking about this question about where to spend your money and whether or not you should be shopping at places that have taken unbiblical stances to different issues in the world today. So if you have a money question that you would love to get answered, please drop it in the comments below, send me an email, or fill out the form that I have in the show notes below, and we would be absolutely excited to answer your question in the future. But with that, let's get talking about where we should be spending our money and how to make those kinds of decisions. Okay, well, hey, David, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Katie, thanks for having me. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, cool. Well, today's question is all about whether or not Christians should shop at stores that have taken unbiblical, political, or social stances. And I got this question from a longtime follower of Agape Investing. Her name is Golden. And she actually lives out here in Colorado, which is kind of cool. And we met up a while back in person and got to sit down for coffee face to face, which isn't, this sounds really like maybe not as big of a deal, but it is a big deal because a lot of the followers and subscribers that I have are from like all over the world. So it was so cool to get to meet someone face to face. So it was really exciting to get this question from her, and it does come via email that she sent me recently. And it's in response to a video that I created not too long ago about investing and how Christians should be investing, kind of like asking that deeper question of what are we actually going to support when we invest in different mutual funds and things like that, which David here is pretty much an expert in. So I was really excited to bring him on and talk about this question. So yeah, I'll just read the question for us here and we'll get into it. But Golden says that your video from last week reminded me of something the Lord showed us in January 2021. Where we invest our money matters, and mutual funds don't allow us the freedom to choose individual companies that honor the Lord. Since then, we've learned it's a lot of work to research and invest in individual companies, and we pray for the companies where our money has already been invested that they would do what is right. I would be curious what your thoughts are about shopping from platforms or stores such as Amazon and Target that have taken unbiblical political or social stances, and yet the individual companies that list their products on Amazon or maybe the employees at Target may hold completely different values than that from, the actual store. She said, you said it best, where and how you spend our money matters to God. And I know I don't have the human capacity to keep up with every company I purchase from, but I believe God can and does lead us to the right places at the right times. So the underlying question here is, should we as Christians be thinking about where our money is going, especially when we just spend it at certain stores? And yeah, David, I'll leave it at that and kind of let you get to it and let us know what
Sure.
your thoughts are.
Yeah, thanks, Katie, and thanks, Golden, for submitting this question. This is a really deep question, but I think one of the things that you mentioned right at the beginning, where you said that where you invest your money matters. I think it does matter, and I think a lot of people are not even aware of where their money is going. So I think it's really good that you're thinking about it and you're praying about it, because I think I'm going to give you my opinion and what my thoughts are on this matter. As a faith-driven financial advisor, I have my own opinions, but I really think everyone should do their own research and their own prayer, because this is a heart issue, more than it is a question of investing. So I think just having your own convictions about where you invest, I think, is important, especially when you look at some of these issues that are happening in the world today. So I'll just say that I would approach this with a lot of prayer and understanding of what God's heart is on investing. But yeah, it does matter, I think, where we invest our money. So with that preface, I'll say that when we think about investing, right, a lot of people, the problem with many investors today, especially Christian investors, is they fall into the trap of assuming that they're just investing in the market, quote unquote, the market, and they're not necessarily considering the means of the gain. So for example, if I said, hey, if I have this amazing company, and we're giving out 100% return year over year, you might be curious as to what the investments are in that fund or what I'm doing, right? But if I said, it's all we're doing is making pornography and distributing pornography, you might not want to be invested in that company. And in that simple example, we can understand that us as Christians, we wouldn't want to be involved in someone's addiction to pornography. But there's other avenues, right? Like tobacco or pornography or alcoholism, or abortions that we might not want to be profiting from. And so I think the concept of ownership and stewardship come into play here, right? So as stewards, we manage our money for the glory of God. And when we think about the stock market, really what we have in the stock market is ownership, a small fraction of ownership in those individual companies. So if you think I'm investing into the, for example, the S&P 500, then you might own about 500 companies. In a small fraction of a way, you have ownership in those companies. So as an investor, the question then lies, what would God do as an owner of this company? Would he own this company, and would he be okay with the profits from that company, right? Proverbs 16 says, better is a little with righteousness than great revenues with injustice. So as Christians, I think we have to really understand, what is the company doing with the money, and how are they profiting? And am I profiting from, for example, other people's addictions or taking human life? I think that's really the bigger and deeper question is, right, how am I operating from an ownership perspective of those shares? Now we switch to a consumerism standpoint, and this is more to your question, right? As a consumer, you also have choices. Just as an owner in companies, you have choices on where you invest. As a consumer, you have choices on where you shop. And so, for example, you mentioned places like Amazon or Target a few years back, and I think you're mentioning when Target decided to make all their restrooms gender neutral, and so any man or woman could go into the same restroom. And yeah, I remember that a lot of Christians got upset and said, we're not shopping at Target anymore. And I responded to a lot of those people in love and just said, hey, you might want to consider the investment that you might own Target in your 401k or your retirement plan. You might be profiting from something that you would not want to shop at. So there's a distinction here between ownership of the company and consumerism of the company, right? So I think as owners in the stock, we have a moral responsibility for the profits that from the companies that we're owning. But I think as consumers, we're responsible morally and biblically for the products and services we buy. So for example, if I go out and purchase pornography, then I'm responsible for that purchase that I've made, and I have to answer to God on why I did that. In the same way that we have an obligation to be responsible in the way that we shop. And so again, I think this is a personal issue. But I always tell people, you have choices when you go shopping. You don't have to shop at some of these maybe bigger name brand firms or companies. And it begs the question, right? Isn't everything tied and associated with sin in some way? And I think God, he does care on how we invest and where we shop. But I think he really looks at our hearts. And when we look at the parable of the talents, he didn't get mad at one of them for not producing 100% or not producing 50%. He was upset because the person did nothing. And so I think in this situation as well, we have to go to the Lord in prayer and say, God, what would you have me to do? And so I don't think necessarily it means going full blown Amish in this scenario, but I do think it begs the question on, like, when we go to a store and we shop there, we are contributing to the success of that store, maybe even just in a small part. But when we're owning a company, we are directly associated with the profits from that company. So I think just be smart about it. There's tools out there, and maybe Katie can put some in the link below,
Yeah.
that will give you opportunities to say, should I shop here or should I not, and will help you understand maybe some of the reasonings why you might not want to shop at a specific company. But then also just do a little bit of research. I know, especially if we want to invest and we want to honor God in where we shop, we can research that, and it's not hard to understand or know what a company is doing. So I think go to the Lord in prayer, ask God what He would have you to do and where to shop, and then look for alternatives. Right, as Christians, we can have a voice in where we spend our money, and if there's a concern, then I would say go to the manager and ask them and talk to them about it. And then if they won't change, or wipe the dust off your shoes and go try to find another place to shop. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, yeah. I honestly, when I got this question, it was something that kind of like hit me like in the heart pretty hard because things like places like Amazon are extremely convenient. I do shop at Amazon. We shop at Amazon quite frequently. And it was a question that when I got it, I was like, I do think pretty critically about where we're investing our dollars, but every dollar that we do spend is an investment into that company. Just as you said, like we are supporting that company just with the proceeds that we give them, the sales that they're making. That's how they stay afloat. And so when we choose to spend our dollars at certain places, it's a vote for that company to kind of stay in business. And so it really did like put me in a position of like, wow, I never really thought deeply enough about this question. And it was a question that it kind of convicted me too. And so I really appreciated the question because there's always something that there's always ways that we can improve the way we spend and use and view our money. And I just really appreciated Golden's question here. And like you said, I think it's really important to consider the companies and how they are affecting our neighbors. Because, we're called as Christians to love God and to love our neighbors as ourselves. And in Romans, we're told not to put stumbling blocks in front of others. And so when we go to support companies that are creating stumbling blocks, like things like pornography or even abortion, supporting abortions and things like that, then we are a part of the problem in a sense. And it's not to say that you have to stop shopping everywhere because again, there are places that are extremely convenient, even places like Walmart offering low prices. I know a lot of people aren't always on board with the way that they create products with low prices, like what are they doing with the labor? How is the labor being purchased in a sense? And so it's really difficult. It's a difficult decision to make, but I do think we should be thinking about this, and I need to
Yeah.
be thinking about this more. And so I was just really appreciative of that. Do you
Yeah,
have
and
any more thoughts on it, David?
I'll just want to say one more thing to Golden and anyone really who's listening. I mean, Golden, you wrote in this question, I believe, because God put this on your heart. And so anyone who feels this same way, I wouldn't let that feeling or conviction slip away. So I'll say, don't do nothing. Do something, right? God. You wrote this question because God put it in your heart. So not everyone is going to feel this way, but for those that do, I would say do something. Examine where you invest, but also examine where you shop. And if there is something that you can do, I believe that's within our power, then we should do that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great point to make too, because I do believe that we can't win every single battle, but if God is putting something specific on our hearts, such as like where we're actually spending our dollars, He's calling us to make a change. And so there's
Amen.
a reason that she's feeling this way. And now that like even me, I'm like, maybe I should reconsider where I spend all of my money too. So
Yeah.
I love this. I love that we can have these conversations and that the Lord just gives us wisdom throughout scripture to make these decisions wisely. And yet I'm also very thankful for a God who, if we never make these changes in our spending, He's not going to condemn us. And I am just thankful for His grace and forgiveness in that as well. So I would just encourage everyone out there to think about this and pray about this for themselves and whether or not God is specifically calling you to make a change. So, yeah. Thanks so much, David. I really appreciate all of your thoughts today.
My pleasure.
Cool. Well, we will see you next time.